Chapter 1. It was at a dinner party that I first became truly aware, drinking too much wine only temporarily deflecting my full and horror-struck attention. Put simply, I was refusing to accept what deep down I already knew. It was, after all, not something that happened to my kind. I was drinking to forget reality, drinking to make the smallness of life around me more real, however temporary, for truthfully, I was already beyond the normal and greater world. I had already descended into hell. "You seem distracted, Adam," came a voice. No, I smiled. "Just lost in thought, that's all." Gazing at my wife, gazing at the surroundings, our so very comfortable surroundings. "Are you sure you're okay?" my wife asked. "Yes," I answered, looking into her trusting, watery eyes, looking at the flowery dress hanging loosely from her swollen breast. Her features were outwardly soft and calm, masking a slight disquiet only I could discern. "You do seem—" "What?" I barked. The guest stilled briefly, all glancing at me briefly. "Are you well, dear? Your face is flushed." Her disquiet blossomed. "Too much alcohol," the first voice boomed. Always too much alcohol, but it buried the past. Helped me forget what I had done and seen. Helped me forget how much I had had to lie to her. Staring at the faces, I saw only their complacency and contentedness. None of them could possibly know. Maybe one of them knew. Maybe one of those guests, one of my friends, had put the screws on me, caused my world to fall apart. And each time we threw a party, as was expected of our rank, I watched them and listened to their conversations. Again, I studied the eyes of my wife. Nothing was quite real. Studied the faces of the men and in particular their eyes. Who had begun the conversation about spiders earlier? Might that be a clue? At last. As they talked, I kept rubbing my big toe, except that I couldn't feel the damn thing. I kept rubbing where it should have been, and again I looked at the surrounding faces. Last of all, I looked at my wife's face. She was happy. Her features had relaxed. She was happy now. Content also. Life was good for her with a man like me. I was a good catch. Finally. Had a good responsible job. Finally. Reckless perhaps, but a profitable way with credit. I could be counted on, you see. Her trust swelled her belly, and I was proud, and I was guilty, and I had tricked her into this false sense of security. She had overlooked my recent erratic behaviour, but she always did. I kept my job. I smiled at the right times. I tried to forget and not think of another dirty, desperate world. I tried to fit in. I tried to forget the nightmare, but I couldn't forget the numbness, could I? The numbness persisted. Its horrific, cold, unfeeling nothingness persisted. Rubbing my toes against the inside of the shoe, I wasn't sure if I could feel flesh or not. A brief hope. Panic engorged my heart as I gasped. She looked at me. The dinner party was a success. Our life was a success. Promotion was due, would you believe? And she was pregnant and blooming. Everything was perfect. Nothing could alter that. Nothing could have altered that but me. And I knew it was all a sham, a dag nightmare. I remembered being introduced to her father, the commander, an imposing man, frightening man, tall, straight, large-boned. Hadn't he fought in the war? Hadn't he led the Legion against the subs uprising? Oughtn't I to know? None of the subs would have done business with that bastard's son-in-law. But they knew I had money, that I was a somebody. Maybe they knew more about me than I guessed. They must have. "Have some wine," inflected a gentler voice. "Thank you." Wine kept me sane. Wine. Pure wine. My wife gave me a disapproving glance. When I drank too much, I could go either way. Nodding for approval, I smiled kindly, so I thought. I looked deeply at her. Our child was growing in her. I tapped her belly. She became flustered. It embarrassed her. I was ready to laugh inwardly when the panic flushed my face again. This was not a joke, not a dream, not even a nightmare. But neither could it be true. It was as if I existed in two worlds. Later we stood at the doorway and wished each guest, each friend, a good night. Perfect. But I wondered about every one of the men as they left with their women clinging to their sides. Patriarchy was the way of our world. Maybe one of those friends knew more about another world and about me. Warm breath escaped in cloudy billows. Our friends hurried to their cars. They were rich enough. All of them, like us, were successful. They would not have been our friends otherwise. As we listened to the sound of the cars rising, watching their lights ignite, I pressed down heavily into the big toe of my right shoe. The wine forced a kind of euphoria through my veins, and also a kind of recklessness. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to shout out to my friends to come back. I wanted to shock them all, but I would have been signing my death warrant, or worse. No, I watched the cars pull silently and speedily away, almost flying through the air, between rows of shiny buildings lit up in spectacular light. No, I maintained that dag of a sham. Hadn't it been a great success? She had asked. Yes, and the word perfect almost formed on my lips again. She led me by the arm back through to the dining room. Things were being cleared away. The eyes of our helpers bored coldly into mine. Could they tell, these lucky ones? Did they know about her? On the bed, I sat watching my wife take off the jewellery. I liked the way she concentrated, staring into the mirror. I liked her. I loved her. I loved her in the way anyone could love. It was more than most. What do you think about Ernest? She asked. Nothing, I answered truthfully. I didn't give a holy fuck dag about Ernest. Didn't you notice? She said, unclipping an earring. Help me with this, mouthing her words through her reflection. I undid the clasp of her necklace. Nothing, she repeated. That's right. She seemed irritated. What was I supposed to notice? Why, how jealous he was. Jealous? Exactly. I wasn't in the mood for her games. Standing up, I forced the blood down into my toes. Why wouldn't the big toe come alive? Why wouldn't the blood circulate? Perhaps it was numb because I had sat awkwardly. When I had spoken to Louise, I had had to turn in a peculiar manner. Come to think of it, that was when Ernest made a slight scene with an unnecessary remark addressed to one of the helpers. Because I was speaking with Louise, I said. Don't be silly. Scrunching my toes and curling them as tightly as I could made no difference. Then what? I shouted. For God's sake, she replied. What is wrong with you tonight? I'm tired. There's nothing wrong. I've told you that. Then don't bite my head off. You seem constantly distracted. Ernest was not jealous because you were speaking with Louise. Sweat was on the bridge of my nose. Then why? I asked as calmly as I was able. She rose from before the mirror and went into the bathroom. Water hissed down the pipes. Because Louise can't have a baby. In bed she kissed the side of my face. I love you, she cooed. We're blessed. Yes. We have a lot to be thankful for. Yes. Are you happy? Of course. Why of course? Because... But I couldn't bring myself to complete the sentence. Next to my skin was the belly containing my child. A child that would be born into the uppers. An upper. I even hated the crudity of the expression. There was no up or down. Yet only down for me. Maybe the child. Maybe my wife. Was her world coming to a shattering end? Thankfully she didn't press me for more words as we lay close together. In the middle of the night I got up and left the room. In one of the guest room's bathroom I sat down on the side of the bath with only a low light for illumination. I sniffed the air for helpers. We believed we could still smell the stench of their previous lives. Out of a cabinet I took a sheathed scalpel. As I sat I considered the routine of the waking day, of going to work and smiling at my staff, of the pretense. It all made sense. That was the unnerving part. It was all so predictable. Taking the blade from its velvet pocket, I watched it flash in the semi-darkness. I'd gone down to help one of those bastards. Had I done a good thing? And I'd gone down again, fool that I was. Against all the rules I'd helped, and been tricked, and I couldn't blame them or her. I could not blame her. It was all she had. I even think she was genuine to begin with, genuine at the end. But I broke one of the essential rules of life. Simple. But I still could not totally believe, not really and truly believe what was happening. I'd had shots for 30 years. There were records showing people who had gone without shots for nearly 3 years who remained protected. Were they just freaks? My mind ached. The thoughts flooding through me caused actual pain. I held the blade close to my eyes. Who had seen what I had seen? Staring down at my big toe, I grinned at its ugliness. It protruded ungainly. It didn't deserve to feel. But I did. I had acted out of compassion. I thought I had understood. I thought she had no one else to turn to. But I'd broken one of the rules, and this life had rules. Bending forward, I took the blade and ran it across the skin of my big toe. A great knot of sick filled my throat. The toe split in front of me. No blood ran. The sight of it chilled my good blood. The wound appeared stuffed with gleaming tar. I had to swallow down a ball of acid phlegm. My eyes stared unbelieving at the pared flesh and the blackness shining in the dim light. A noise outside reminded me of the stealth of the helpers, and of her, and of my wife and child, and it was as if the whole of my life concentrated into a narrowing tunnel of disbelief and fear. The toe gaped up at me. Even the smell rose through the stifled night air. It had only been 4 months since the last shot. It could not be what it appeared to be. And like a man gone crazy, I even remembered Xmas coming. Fucking Xmas. I laughed, dropping a single tear from my right eye almost simultaneously. I was stone cold sober, and the blade of the scalpel was shaking in my hand. The first thing I had to do was hide the sight of the damaged toe, not draw attention to it. At least nobody would be looking for symptoms in me. It was crazy, a crazy nightmare, and I had to think fast. The problem was the credit, the damn holy money. If I could get a shot quickly, then perhaps I could stem the spread. Only the big toe was affected so far. I ran the blade of the scalpel lightly over the toe that touched the big one. Thank God I could feel the sensation of the fine metal. I was even tempted to draw blood just for the satisfaction of seeing it flow. I had to get credit. It would mean seeing the doctor too. At least I could count on him. At least I wouldn't be on the register. Taking some lint from the bathroom cabinet and a roll of bandage, I carefully squeezed the wound together. Only then did I realise the stupidity of cutting the flesh open. Yet didn't I need to know for certain? With a disease, nobody could be trusted. I must have got infected in subearth, of course. Thoughts flooded my brain. I was sweating, not thinking as straight as I should. If only I hadn't listened to her. This is what becomes of the lawbreakers, and this was the way a panicked man thought. Jo was my main worry. I had to keep everything from her. A sound came from outside the bathroom. I could not raise my voice. I didn't want to wake Jo. Was it one of the helpers? They were my second worry. They would shot me if they could. If they shot me, their life would improve. I thought back to how it had all come about. How a helper had approached me and how I had foolishly listened. Had she known something about me? I worked for the government, was an enemy to them all. Why had she taken the risk of approaching me? I could have uncovered her, had her vaporized, or worse. But the helper had been beautiful, and Jo and I had had problems. It was the beginning of the downfall. We thought a baby would heal us, and the idea seemed to, but a baby, still in the womb, can push a woman to the edge. That's what happened. And yet Jo withdrew into a manicured, perfect world. When I moved through the darkness of our apartment, I listened for the breathing of helpers. As I opened our bedroom door, I was shocked to see Jo awake and the tableside light switched on. "What is it?" I asked awkwardly. "I'm scared," she replied. "Scared?" Yes. There was a pause. I stepped towards the bed so that her sight would not be drawn to the bandage around my toe. "Where have you been? I needed you." "What's wrong?" ignoring her question. "I thought I saw something." "Jo?" "I did." "You know that's not possible. You're just remembering the stupid conversation at dinner. It really isn't possible." "Why not? One could escape. You've said so yourself in the past." "Not here. Not in this place. Trust me." How could I have said such a thing? And for a moment I was taken back in time. "I'm scared." "I'll come to bed. Turn off the light." "Search first, please." "Then you'll sleep?" "If you search thoroughly." I got down onto my knees and looked beneath the bed. Keeping my body between her sight and the bandage, I pretended to look. But there were no spiders. All had been killed, so we believed. The helpers knew well enough how to track and kill them. But then spiders and the disease both existed well enough in subearth, didn't they?